As we know, the earth is filled up with people as well as other beings such as animals, plants, minerals, spirits, all kinds of beings. When it comes to us being present here in the now, on this planet, in this time of obviously great change, a little bit of chaos, not even just a little bit, but there's also significant shifts in the energetics of planet Earth for when it comes to the state of consciousness of the planet. And what that tends to do, as a lot of us know, is that when this higher frequency enters the fields of the planet. Now, our planet has many energy fields, just like we do as humans. When that happens, the old debris starts to shake up. So anything that has existed before, anything that is more dense in its frequency, starts to kind of bubble up back into the surface. Once it comes, first of all, we must clear this. We must remember that we don't always need to sort of clutch onto this debris that's coming up to the surface. We don't need to be clutching into this density, but we can acknowledge it, we can clear it and let it go. That's one thing that we should first of all remember during this time. We could be dealing with situations where certain people may not be able to notice when this is happening, when these older frequencies are coming into the surface. We should be very mindful of how we approach these situations, and of course always respect the free will of the person, because it's always within our free will to decide how we want to deal with any given situation. And people at different levels of consciousness are going to treat those shifts differently. People of different levels of consciousness are going to interact with one another differently. Say somebody who's already on the spiritual path, they may be aware that something's kind of happening. They may be aware that there's more than meets the eye, that it isn't just old experiences coming back for the sake of it. Somebody who's a little bit more advanced, somebody who has already been a little bit longer on the path, somebody who has worked with spirit for longer, somebody who knows a little bit of something about alchemy perhaps, and they know how to manifest things, they know how to different spiritual laws work, they have awareness of what karma really is. They might be able to even go deeper with that. They might even be knowing that, okay, this is just something that's coming up to be cleared, and this is something that we should absolutely be present with. On the other hand, somebody who's very new to the path, or somebody who has maybe perhaps just woke up, or even somebody who isn't on the spiritual path to begin with, they may sort of act in sort of a way where they don't know what's going on. They may mistake this as something to be processing, or something to be going into, something to be sucked in by. In that case, what we should be aware of is to let people know the higher perspective as much as possible, meet them where they're at, okay? Because it doesn't really help if we are sort of preaching from the place we are at necessarily. Like, the preaching isn't going to help, but what is going to help is knowing how to approach the situation in a way where this sort of the gap of knowledge and the gap of awareness can be, what's the word I'm looking for? This gap can be closed in a way that's the most comfortable for each involved. Sometimes that may actually require for also the person that's at the lower level of consciousness to be raised up a little bit, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we have to come down, okay? Because if we sort of find that we have to come down from our level of consciousness, then we are not actually as strong in our frequency as we think we are. Because the truth about being where you're at and being strong in your frequency means that you're able to hold that frequency as much as possible. And even in those cases, like of course there's like this oscillation, and there's like shifts, and this sort of wave movement happening all the time. It's not like we are perfect beings at all times, but it's just to say that the most constant frequency that we are at, the most stable frequency we are at, remains the same. When we as starseeds, we are going about our lives and we're connecting with different people. We're connecting with people on different levels of consciousness. We should always remember this, that they're looking at things from their perspective, from their level of consciousness, whether this be in the case where someone's maybe not even awake. They might be going on autopilot, they might be going on sort of automated responses, things that just pop up in their head. They may not be stopping to think, they may not be stopping to feel, they may not be that open to different perspectives or different consciousness. They might be very close-minded, tunnel-visioned into whatever their perspective is and whoever they are as people. And that doesn't necessarily mean that they're bad people. Okay, so just fucking remember this. Nobody is a bad person, nobody is evil just because of their level of consciousness. It just is what it is. It is true liberation in knowing this. Because then we are not going about, labeling others, we are not going into black and white thinking, we are not projecting stuff onto others. Because, this is actually an easy way to be the person who projects a lot of negativity onto others and a lot of judgment, a lot of assumptions. If you have this idea about an unawakened person, if you have an idea of any person to begin with, it's easy to start projecting energies onto others. And this way, what actually happens, or what could happen potentially, doesn't always, but what could happen, is that we are accidentally limiting that person's, awareness and person's potential. And we shouldn't be doing that. Okay, that's not fair to anyone. What's a better idea is to be aware that, honestly, somebody who's unawakened has great potential to expand their consciousness. Somebody who's a beginner has a lot to learn. Even a person who's well on their path, even somebody like me who's in a teacher position, we still have a lot to learn. Like, there's still stuff that we haven't learned. And especially someone who's a specialist, they are specialized in a certain field, a certain aspect of, say, in this case, a spiritual consciousness. They have many other things to explore, many other specialties to look at. There are things that we might know more of versus somebody else might know a whole lot about something else. And I think this is an important point of consciousness to remember. What's a good way to know whether an interaction is going to be useful is to see if we can find common ground and see if we can actually elevate the conversation. Because what can sometimes, of course, happen is that if we are dealing with a person with a lower state of consciousness, it could be that the conversation just isn't going anywhere. It could be stalling. It could be, again, like not leading to any kind of shift. It could be that it's just kind of looping in place. And at that point, we want to figure out where the density is keeping us looping in place. What's the dense point of consciousness in the interaction? Perhaps it could be a limitation in any of us energy fields. And when we are able to recognize that, that's when we can start to sort of break the density down. Of course, with consent, we don't want to do like non-consensual energy work, but we also want to just be aware that also our consent in regards to that has to be respected. We can start to propose with these higher frequency ideas, higher frequency perspectives in these situations. We can gently start to sort of bring this into these other people. And this does not mean that we're going to convert people into our spiritual beliefs or we're going to convert people to our philosophies. It's not about converting people. It's more about just sharing our perspectives and just being aware that people can still have different perspectives. People can still have different preferences. People can still have different ways of life, regardless of where we are at. Okay, so we always have to remember that we have this other person here. Like, they have all kinds of stuff, just like we do. They have all kinds of stuff. So it isn't just about us, but it's about how do these things mesh together. Are we dealing with a situation that could potentially help us both evolve? Or are we dealing with a situation where the other one is trying to drag the other down and then the other one is trying to pull the other one up. We want to really be mindful that doesn't get imbalanced and that everything's fair. If we are starting to get into a situation where another person, because I know for our starseed, we tend to come to this planet with a whole lot more spiritual wisdom, like a lot more karma, I would say. And it tends to be very easy for us to raise our consciousness, and it tends to be really easy for us to also embody galactic frequencies and see things from different sides and to see the higher perspectives. Because we tend to be the different ones, we also tend to have very different lives. We tend to have a lot of sort of data to pull from, and we can become very intellectual socially as well. But a lot of the times the problem comes when we over-isolate, or if we decide to not heal. When we decide to not heal our traumas or not look at our shadow, that's when those problems come. Because at that point, we have decided that the drama within our heads is more important than us connecting with other people and than us making a difference in other people's lives, and that us making a difference in this world to begin with. And that's not to say that there isn't a space for isolation. I will talk about that in the next video that I'm filming today. The problem is when we over-isolate, we sort of forget how to interact with other people. And that can also damage this process of us being able to connect with other people, and we're going to feel even more different, like this is just going to continue. Then we are starting to actually create our own cycles and loops. And if we are, say, wise and that we don't over-isolate ourselves, then we can be very spiritually intellectual people. And the problem with that is that sometimes we tend to then face more and more of beings that perhaps aren't that spiritually evolved. That can become a bit tricky, and a lot of us do identify as empaths as well, and highly sensitive people. And the thing about that is we tend to feel a lot of energies. And for this, what does help is doing simple energy work practices, wearing protective crystals, whether it's for jewelry. I've got this organite that purifies my energy field, also increases my life force. And then I also tend to have like protective crystals. First of all, my home is filled with crystals that I collected over like more than 10 years. I also carry protective crystals such as garnet, rainbow obsidian, for example, sometimes even lapis lazuli and lepidolite, just to protect my energy field a little bit more. And there's other ones also, like different kinds of jaspers, like red jasper is also very protective, and just any kind of obsidian really, I think. The thing about using protective crystals is that they do have to be cleansed. And so when we have gone about our day, especially if like me, you live in a city, you go into public transport, you want to have something protective on you. Because there's a lot of people and you might be picking up stuff. And again, none of this is like something that you cannot deal with, because obviously you can then just cleanse, and especially if it's something like really nasty, you can banish things. So you do want to start to practice some energy hygiene, because this then helps you also to know what is your energy, what isn't. It's going to help with dealing with this situations, especially if someone's like really draining. You can try out my energy work practice that I have shared here on the channel. It's very simple, very quick. It doesn't have to take too long, but if you do want to do like a proper cleanse and take a little bit more time with that, you always can. Like nothing's stopping you from taking an hour to do an energy cleansing on yourself or a revitalization. That's kind of what I would call my practice, because we're releasing a lot of stuff and we're also calling our energy back. So you can try that practice as well if you want to make sure that you are not taking on energies that aren't yours, and also make sure that you're calling back the energy that you may have lost in these interactions. Like I said, there's a lot for us to learn, and I don't think it's really useful to be so heavily caught up into what level each person is at, but it's something to be aware of, because then we know at least, like especially if we want to help somebody understand something, then it's going to be useful to perhaps learn how to deal with that level of consciousness in a way that isn't like patronizing, that isn't like projecting again a lot of judgment and stuff onto them, but we are going to be able to close the gap, and we're going to be able to explain things, help other people understand things in a way that makes perfect sense for them, that allows them to come to understand where we're coming from. And also, be a good listener. Listen to actually what's being said. It might be challenging for some people to listen between the lines, but you can use a stone called Larimar, crystal called Larimar. This is good for hearing the truth, and it's going to be good for also feeling the frequencies. You're going to be better able to also communicate with people on a more subtle level, so you're not necessarily relying on the words too heavily, but the frequency that's behind them. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your presence. Yeah, haven't yet subscribed to the channel, check out the links in the description. I got a video all about how to connect with source consciousness. It's like how to better connect with source consciousness, how to improve your connection with source. That is available for my newsletter subscribers until the end of 2025. So do check it out. It is down in the description box below. And yeah, also comment below if you have any additional questions, if you have anything that you would like me to expand upon. I'll see what I can do for you. So thank you very much, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.